Hey, everybody. Today's going to be an amazing podcast. Today we have Bianca Hillier, who's best known for her hair painting skills and customized beachy balayage. She's able to flawlessly capture those sun-kissed surfer highlights for her clients, and she prides herself on her natural ability to create dimensional color and hand-tailored to each client. Currently, she is the exclusive colorist for Nomad Model Management. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Nomad, yeah. And
Yeah.
Trisha Brink Model Management,
Mm-hmm.
where she's worked with world-renowned models, celebrities, and public figures, and has traveled throughout the world. And I'm so glad we actually caught you because I know you've been really busy.
Yes.
It's been really fun watching your work, and I'm kind of excited because I think that there are a lot of questions that people have, particularly about models, because obviously we all look at them in the magazines, on commercials, on TV, and they all have a certain look that all of us want to really achieve. So I kind of am curious, when these management companies send you these models, are they like, hey, we need you to tweak the color a little bit, or is it kind of like the reality TV shows where it's like a complete overhaul makeover where they're going, oh no, what did you do to my hair?
Well, I think obviously every client, every model, everyone is different, right? So it kind of does depend per person. I would say mostly when we're doing a whole change, it's generally when a model is newly signed to an agency. So say if I get signed today, they're like, okay, well, you need highlights because you're not going to sell for any commercial stuff. So then they would send the model to, Bianca Color, me. And then they would send her over and they would say, hey, what are you thinking? We think it's too dark. We think she's not going to sell, which is also a really interesting thing because I didn't realize this years ago. A model had come to me and she's like, hey, my agent said I'm not selling because my hair's too dark. And she did a bunch of catalog work. So she's, when someone does catalog work, when something's dark, it draws to the darkness. So like your eye is drawn to the darkness. So having highlights and movement made them sell the clothes more. Does that make sense? So that was really
Interesting.
interesting to me too. Yeah.
So it was like a
Um,
dynamic color that was drawing the eye as opposed to the clothing.
yes. And so they're like, okay,
Wow.
we need to make her hair a little more like, a little highlighted, a little more inviting, a little not so dark. So I did that and she's like, oh my God, I've been getting booked so much more. So things like that, there's little tricks and stuff. So I learned that about if someone's doing catalog work, meaning like someone who would sell for or be in like Revolve or, like things like that. Things catalog,
Clothing
that's what kind of
stores, catalog
exactly.
work, right?
Yes.
Where
And
they're
then
selling a
somebody
clothes.
yeah, exactly. Where they're like selling an item. And then something that's a little less inviting or needs to be less inviting is something that's a little bit more like high end, high fashion couture. So, say maybe like Chanel or something. They can have a dark black bob or, a fantasy color pink because they're looking more so for the like artistic view opposed to something that's going to sell to the mass market. So that was
Wow.
interesting. And then what's really funny is that a lot of the times, so we call it like model behavior, right? So I have an itch, I'm sorry.
That's
Um,
okay.
so so we call it model behavior. And so sometimes models will come in and they won't talk to their agent and they'll say, hey, yeah, I'm good to go. Let's take me dark or let's take me platinum or whatever, right? The extreme say. And so I'm like, okay, like, yeah, sounds good. What do you like? What project are you working on? Is there a reason why? And they're like, oh, no, it's like, we're just going to do new digitals. I'm like, okay, then I'll do it. And it looks amazing or, whatever, it's different. And then their agent would be like, yo, did you just make her platinum? And I'm like, yeah, like I thought that was the plan. And they're like, we did not okay this. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. This is what I thought was like the new, like, I thought this was a new plan. And so this is model behavior. And we all like joke about it and laugh about it. But this has happened to me a couple of times. And a couple of times the agent was like, yo, did you do this? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, well, we didn't okay it, but we love it. And she's selling more. So
Ooh.
thank you. So that's always a good twist. And then I'll hit up, whoever that client is. And I'm like, hey, I just got yelled at. And they're like, no, I'm selling more. I'm like, you're right. But next time you have to check in.
So do you find that sometimes when they do a drastic thing like that, that they might like cross over, say, from catalog work to something else by doing something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
That's
so sometimes
interesting.
that's what the model, themselves actually wants to do. And that's fine. But generally, if, your agency
You're
is the one that's
contracted.
booking you jobs and paying you and you're contracted, you should be running it by them. So that's just kind of funny. But yeah, that is something that does happen sometimes. But for the most part, it's a team effort. So sometimes I'll even have one of the agents on FaceTime as I'm consulting with the model, because sometimes they don't know all the right lingo, whether like something gold to them is like orange, or something ashy is not to them. So they don't always know. And so sometimes, the agent will then pull up a photo and be like, see how you can see how it's a little bit, too warm or whatever. We need to calm that down because editing. Okay, so color for a model or somebody who's going to be on film is much different than somebody who's not. So
But
obviously,
it seems like everybody wants to have that color though. It
yes.
seems,
Okay. Well, we have to also keep in mind that everyone's always getting photoshopped. So yes, these girls are beautiful and they're flawless, no doubt. But there's always Photoshop. So for instance, with Rachel Barnes, I've been doing her for years. We've taken her really blonde, and now she was kind of more brunette blonde, and we
yeah, you
just took her a
changed
little
it
bit lighter
recently,
again.
didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we just took her a little lighter again. But what happens is when, so they're always on film, right? They're always taking these photos of themselves or having these photos taken, and that's their job. So having somebody in real life, you're seeing real light. So whether that's you're in an office or whether you're outside at the pool or whatever it happens to be, right? But on film, it's a completely different realm. It's a whole different world because you have all these outside factors like editing and, putting cool tones in or putting warm tones in,
And all the different
adjusting
lighting
all.
to the studio.
Exactly. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So all these things change. So when somebody is showing me a photo of their hair and they're in their bathroom and it looks like very, very warm or something, it's because they have an orange light. And then they're showing me a photo of this, this model outside at the beach and she has these like golden highlights, but it's not brassy. And I'm like, yes, but these are completely different environmental changes. So editing totally changes the game because, for instance, Rachel Barnes, I have to tone her extra ashy because she has tan, she's a very tan girl. So when they are editing, they're adding warmth to her. They're not adding ash because it would make her have like a gray tone. So they're not adding ash, meaning they're warming it up. So the hair is also going to get warmer too. So to prevent it from looking brassy, you have to add in a little bit of ash to counteract that.
It is interesting because I do know, and I would imagine a lot of our listeners have had similar experiences that when we get our hair done, like for instance, I have my blonde. When I first get it done, it is a very ashy, very, very ashy, which means it has a little bit of a gray undertone. If I go into my bathroom, it has a yellow light. I know it does. So suddenly it doesn't look quite as ashy. If I go outside, my hair is white. And this particular, it's, it's mellow, it's cool, but it's not overly so. So lighting really does make a big difference. So I think you have to kind of think about what is like somewhere in between if you're doing it at home, like if not at home, but like in real life.
Yeah, if you're having daily wear and tear, right? If you're going to be in the office, if you're going to be, at a restaurant, if you're going to be at the pool, it's totally different. Because even I'm sure, as you know, if you took a photo in your bathroom opposed to taking a photo outside, you're like, oh my God, it's if you're turned around, it's two different people, right? So yeah,
I guess that's why there's so many filters on Instagram and whatnot.
Oh my God, I know, it's crazy, right? Yes. And that's a whole other thing because like now we have this like surreal, unrealistic view of what beauty is, first of all, but also like what is actual realistic, like what is actually realistic, because we have all these filters that, I mean, there's even a hair filter where you can like change it to like pink or blue or whatever it is, blonde
so
and stuff.
freaking fun though.
There's all these things. Yeah. And I love it. So when a client does come to me and she's like, I want, mint hair. And I'm like, well, let's try this out. Let's see how you actually feel, So those things are fun, but it does give us this like totally unrealistic view of like what
so I'm actually curious when it comes to most people like you, the ones that you're doing like that are on magazine covers and whatnot, is there something that is very typical for you to do? Now, as in the pro side of our industry, you are a well-known educator, and your technique, I like, actually amongst me and my friends, we all call it like, hair porn. When we see the technique that you do, it's absolutely mesmerizing. So I know that what you're doing brings this beautiful, flawless, sun-kissed, gorgeous balayage. And I'm wondering, how is that more of the kind of look that you're usually getting coming in? Is that the kind of things that a lot of modeling agencies are demanding, a lot of magazines are demanding, or is things starting to shift? Is there other things they're looking for?
I think that it really does depend per person. I like to customize per person. I would say that I've noticed with all this like pandemic that's happened and everything, I think there has been a shift. I think there's been a big shift from high maintenance color turning into everyone wanting to be a bit more low maintenance, because everyone's been looking at the mirror, nitpicking, like, doing whatever. So I do think that things have shifted. So a lot of these like frosty, icy tone clients, whether it's a bleach and tone or a highlight, I do find that a lot of people are starting to accept and embrace the warmth a bit more, which is nice, because what people tend to not understand is that gold reflects the most light. So you're going to get most of that shine from something that has a golden or a warm tone, opposed to like frosty, icy white. People are like, I want it bright, 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 bright. But gold is going
It
to
takes a lot of
light.
work to get that light, ashy shine.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes. And it takes a long time to really get you there. Because even if you have that frosty like color, it's not going to have that glow for quite some time until you've done it repeatedly for, quite some time. But I would say for the most part, I wouldn't say that I've noticed most people going, dark or light, or, one or the other. But what I have noticed, whether you're brunette or blonde or redhead, I've noticed a lot more requests for like low maintenance type color.
I like that. And do you get a lot of redheads? I'm sorry, I'm curious.
I know. So a common question. So when I get new clients, they'll come into the salon and they're like, oh, my assistant will seat them, and I'll come over and I'll like say, hey, like, what are we doing today? And they're like, oh, we're here for Bianca. And I'm like, oh, I'm Bianca. And they're like, oh, I didn't know, I thought you would be blonde. And I was like, oh, why? And they're like, well, because you're known for your highlights. And I was like, okay, I could see that, but that's always like funny.
Don't do it to my own hair.
I'm actually allergic to bleach, so I can't even highlight myself even if I wanted to. But sorry, I'm going off topic now.
No, that's fine. No, but I mean, I think that there's definitely, like you were saying about having a lot of natural colors coming in. I know that that is your natural color, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Yes. But going back to what I was saying with the redheads, I know, gorgeous. But
redheads, yes. So new clients will come in and they'll say, what do you do the most of, blonde or brown? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't say I do more brunettes or blondes. I think it's 50-50, but I have some redheads, but I would say that I definitely do the least amount of my clientele. The least amount is redheads. I do quite a bit of fantasy colors. So like pink, blue, like fire red and stuff. But I would say natural redheads, that's probably my least requested look. And so a lot of people do come in. I can foil highlight, and, I do different types of highlights, even with balayage painting. But I think what most people want to see is those cottons. They want to see for lack of a better word, the painted like stripes on the hair and stuff. They want to see that because that's what they're seeing on my Instagram. I remember one time I went to the Middle East and I did a different type of highlight, like a different pattern. I like to call it kind of like sheets, where I'm kind of covering more ground, all the hair, opposed to like a skinny stripe. It's covering all the ground. So one of the clients out there, she was just like, she's so funny. And she's like, excuse me. She's like, are you not going to be doing the stripes? And I was like, well, for the look that you want, we discussed all these like photos. We had a consultation. And I didn't tell, I mean, I don't tell them I'm doing stripes or I'm not. I just
It's
go
like,
in and
why
say,
would we tell them that our technique? There's no reason
yeah, yeah,
to.
exactly.
As
There's
long
no
as you
reason,
get
right?
to the destination.
Yes, exactly. So then, you know, I'm in, I get in there and I start painting and she's like, excuse me, are you going to do this? So I was like, well, actually to get, you know, what you need is, you know, more achievable by this. And so those are kind of funny things, but for the most part, people, what they do request is that specific look, you know, whether it's like the Rocky Barnes or whether, you know, they're pointing out photos on my Instagram that, you know,
Yeah.
are painted by my signature balayage. So
Do you get a lot of people that are pointing out to some of the models that you do and going, I want this?
yes. So what happens is, you know, I'm so lucky. I think everyone is beautiful. And I'm really lucky that whether my clients are models or not, I have a beautiful clientele. So everyone makes my hair look good, or great. But definitely have it tends to be with newer clients because a lot of my older, you know, my former clients know kind of how I work and how to speak to me and all that kind of stuff. So with a new client, it's funny because a lot of the times they will show me, you know, a model on from my Instagram page. We'll scroll through, we'll find somebody that they like and we'll you know, discuss. So sometimes I don't really think that they want, you know, whether it's warm or ashy, right? Say they're saying ashy. I don't really think that they want ashy. I think that they want to look like the model. So I have to cover up the face on the photo and then I flip it upside down so that, you know, the hair is upside down. And I'm like, is this still what you want? And they're like, well, actually, it's kind of gray. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really
That
think
is
you
so
want ashy
interesting that you
blonde.
do that. I think everybody should probably try doing that at home before even going to a
Yeah.
hairdresser.
Yeah,
Like
for
cover the
sure.
face. I used to always tell people to look at the hairline because a lot of time the hairlines are different. Look at
Oh,
the
totally.
texture because a lot of times it's just not realistic. You know, I'm looking at
Yes.
curly hair, but their curl is a lot different than yours, you know.
Yes, or when they have like a lot of clients who have like a blunt cut and like stringy, um, maybe like Caucasian hair, like fine, you know, Caucasian hair. And they're showing me like one of the photos with like ethnic, very like beach wave, like, you know, tons of hair. And I'm like, okay, but you have a blunt cut, you don't have layers, and it's not going to look like that, period, because you're
Mm.
giving me a completely different canvas to even start with. And so for the most part, I've gotten better about, you know, explaining that to people over the years, you know, I'm better by this time in my career. And
I do
so,
find it's sometimes really helping our clients to accept their own unique beauty, which is what they have, and
yeah,
to help them understand you can take this to another level, but you got to let go of those preconceived notions of what, you know, other people have. Let's look at what you have.
totally. Yeah. And because like you're saying, you know, everyone's hair texture, everyone's hair cut, everyone's, you know, body, face shape, everything's different. So all of that really does matter when you are, especially doing that hairline and you're like contouring around the face,
Mhm.
or when you are, you know, tipping out those tips and stuff. All these things really, really matter. So I tell them, like, generally, you don't have to find somebody that looks like you, but you have to somewhat find somebody that has similar hair or hair texture to you so that we can kind of go off of that. Because even if you're showing me, like, you would have to show me somebody with like a pixie, because if you're showing me somebody with hair to here and you're like, I like that dimension, I'm like, but you're showing me somebody that has, you know, 2 feet of hair and you have 5 inches of hair. So it's never
Mhm.
going to look that way. So I think being realistic in your consultation, it's huge, whether it's a model
And
or
bone
somebody who has an office job.
structure, the whole 9 years. Yeah, like you said, body, bone structure. I have a secret. I'll tell you this.
Mm-hmm. Let's hear.
I have a flat back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Back of my head is flat. So when I get a haircut, I have to make sure I have body in certain area to kind of fake that I have a noggin. But it's
Yeah.
like, but people don't think about that. They look at a haircut and they say, I want it exactly like that. But you can't. You
Well, and
have
you
to
have
be
to
able to
keep in
adjust to
mind.
what you have. And I'm not going to sit here, even though it's probably because I was laid in the crib when I was little and just left there. No, that's horrible. No, I didn't know. No,
That's
no.
hilarious.
But the point is that I think you have to accept who you are, accept what you have, and then work from it from there and not get so hung up on what everybody else is doing.
Agreed.
I
Yeah.
think it's a great what you're doing, clients. Actually, I do have because you mentioned going over to the Middle East. We were talking about lighting, and I know that you have at times have explained that sometimes with lighting, even going country to country, city to city, you'll change your hair color techniques and what you do based on that. Could you expand on that? I'm really curious.
Yeah. So some people have asked me before, like, is coloring hair? Some people, first of all, I mean, many people in America, where I'm from, have never been to the Middle East, or a lot of Americans have not even traveled out of the country, right? And so it's really interesting to me because a lot of my clients, I would say majority of my clients are models. So they are traveling for work or on holiday or whatever, right? And so it's crazy, like you're saying, lighting plays a huge factor into coloring, right? So to give you like an extreme, right? So London is super gray and gloomy. So if I have a model that's signed to a London agency and she comes back and forth between LA and London, and they say that they want her to have, I don't know, golden hair, right? Because there's so much light in California, we have the sun, we have, we're always at the pool, we're always outside, we're always getting this like reflective light. So gold reflects the most light. So if you're outside in a sunny day, it's going to feel like glowy and blonde and stuff. And then if you go outside on a gloomy day, like in London, it's not going to reflect as much light. So you're having to input different chemicals or different formulations, so to speak, in order to achieve the same look. So it's been really interesting as I've traveled all over the world. I go often to the Middle East. I've taught classes in Australia. I've taught classes in like Vegas and Hawaii and stuff. And in Denver, which is like, it was more gloomy, but definitely a different gloomy than like New York or London, so to speak. So it's all really different, but the environment plays a huge factor in obviously what everybody sees, right?
And when you say environment, you're talking about the lighting that is there.
Yeah, like the light that's even provided from the sky, like clouds.
We were just talking about how this past week I was on vacation and my girlfriend just visited from New York, and my best friend since I was 13 years old, and she could not get over the skies here. Here in Florida, the skies are so blue. It's very reflective. Like my hair looks super light. I know that when I go up to New York, it doesn't have the same look. It's a different sky. It's just different environmentally. So the sun is reflecting it, and then it reflects the color of everything. So I think that is so fascinating. I never really ever thought of that. So basically what you're saying is that if you have someone that's, say, working in the US and in a particular area, but they're being sent to another country, you're going to keep that in your head that, I might have to adjust their color.
Yeah. So sometimes the agent will text me and be like, hey, she just got booked ticket, or the model will be like, hey, I just got booked in, I'm going to be in Miami for a week, or, whatever. And so actually this just happened. I was flown out to Miami. I did a house call. My assistant and I went out and we did a bleach and tone, and she has hair about here below her
the waist.
Yes. And she's platinum. I do her like icy platinum, but it was definitely, I adjusted the toner just by 2 minutes. So I didn't even necessarily need to adjust the color because we're here in sunny California. So when I do it and she's here, it's a little bit different than Florida, but nothing crazy, right? So sometimes 2 minutes is all you need to just kind of let it sink in and get a little icier or a little more golden or whatever it happens to be. But yes, definitely the sky, the natural environment plays a huge factor. In what you're seeing. This
is why you're so in demand. I can only imagine. She's like, I'm thinking about environmental factors. I got it all covered. Wow, that is really fascinating. So I'm kind of curious, like what kind of trends are you seeing? I mean, are they a lot different here in the US than they are in other countries? I mean, is there something you see right now that's super hot in the US and yet?
I mean, I would say overall, like I said, lower maintenance color. So whatever that really means to that individual person. But in terms of an actual color, I would say I'm still seeing a lot of fantasy color pinks. There was a point in time when they were kind of turning into more blues for a minute, but I think it's going back to pinks again.
It's that warm color.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a little less maintenance than blue. Blue, if you have any yellow or blonde in your hair, it's going to get mossy. It's going to get green. It's not going to fade as well. Where pink is going to fade a little more like fantasy, maybe peachy, opposed to like a ugly color, so to speak. So so I mean, that does kind of coincide
like a
with
mud
the low
green.
maintenance thing. Yeah, it's never cute, right?
No.
And then as for like natural, brunette or blonde, redhead colors, like I said, I'm just seeing a lot of warmth. So even in the Middle East, I've noticed the last couple times that I went, people were starting to like stray away from like wanting that frosty color. They were into more like sandy neutrals. And now I haven't been to the Middle East in a minute, but my clients that are overseas, they'll send me a photo and be like, hey, I want this. Like, what should I tell my girl? Because you can't come here because it's pandemic, whatever. So I've been noticing that it is a lot more golden tones. So I think people are just wanting that glossy, like reflective color to feel really sparkly and like shimmery and pretty.
And it looks like it's sun-kissed and you're just
Yeah.
going for that. Yeah. Natural is right now the way to go.
Yeah.
Though I am
think everyone's
definitely
just wanting
seeing
it.
more blonde.
More blonde.
Personally. Well, I mean, I'm not saying, heart like me, whereas platinum, I'm just saying blonde as in like finding those highlights, bringing out like that sun-kissed
I mean,
look.
I have actually just in this past month since the salon has been open, I have been doing a ton of highlights because it's been catch up from the pandemic, but also because I have noticed a lot of people are saying like, I just want to be bright for the summer. I just want to feel good. I'm like, I get it because things are starting to open up. People are going to be outside. So people want to feel light. They want to feel bright. And it kind of goes back to how I was explaining that in like catalog work and everyday type shopping, so to speak, something bright and light sells. So being in person with something bright and light, you're going to feel a little more inviting. So things that people are going to start to come out again, or, we're crossing our fingers, then I think that, it's a little more inviting. It's a little more something for someone to come up and talk to you, opposed to the darkness is not quite as inviting.
So do you predict as things are starting to open up, you're going to see a little bit more high maintenance stuff? I mean, I know personally,
so.
like I'm just dying to go out and do those like things that I haven't done in a year.
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone's right at that point right now, and, I feel bad because we're in the salon and this happens to be the topic of conversation all the time. But, when you're in that chair with somebody, you talk about, current events, things that you're doing. And I haven't been traveling as much and neither have my clients. And so this is the global, universal conversation. So yeah, I think everyone's really excited and everyone's starting to get pumped to just kind of, like you're saying, get back to, the new norm or whatever that will be, and kind of just get back to, whether that's working out or, going to restaurants indoors, I think just got opened here and stuff. So yeah, I think things are starting to open up and people are starting to feel a little normal again. So I think people are willing to kind of invest in their appearance once again.
I love that. I can't wait for everything to kind of somewhat go back to normal and be able to do all these things again. Because
yeah,
even just me,
it's been a long year.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And the truth is that I do think it's really great that people took the time to kind of take care of themselves at home. And I think a lot of people really took that seriously. They got their hair in better shape, their skin, doing those things that are pampering at home, but in the same breath, you can't do some of the more showy things as much.
Totally. Yeah. So like you're saying, because salons have been closed and because, I wasn't working as much. So I had all my clients, like, do all the Olaplex you can at home, sleep with it, do your thing, because like, this is your time to truly repair your hair. You don't need it to be styled. You're not going anywhere. You're not having parties and events. Like, so just like take care of yourself. And so it was kind of funny. People all over Instagram were doing like what was like the banana bread. And then everyone started doing like the facial beauty routines and the hair routines and stuff. So Olaplex made a big, grand appearance during pandemic because I think it really helped. And so I think there was definitely phases, and I think we're in we're like phasing out all of the homebody stuff. And I think people are starting to get back into like, real life, real world.
Oh gosh, definitely. So I am so excited that we got to talk. And I feel like this is going to be like part one, because I feel like we have so much more to talk about and so many different subjects that we could talk about. So I'll be calling you soon, Bianca.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So much.
I'm excited. Perfect.
Have a great and awesome day, and we will tune in soon.
All right. Perfect. Bye.